Hi there and welcome to 1080's weekly career insight session. So today I am joined again by Gill, Amos and Alyson Ainsworth. So morning, afternoon even, ladies. And today we're going to be talking about job hunting for the over 50. So this came about because we have a fair few clients who we've kind of identified have been saying that they think they're too old to find a new role. And we've seen quite a lot of talk about this on LinkedIn and various other places. So we thought it'd be good to have this as a topic. So there's lots that we're going to be talking about that is relevant for everyone job hunting, but some other general more specific information for those people who are kind of into that category. So as always, join us and comment for letting us know where you're from, and like and ask questions throughout, just that we can make it as interactive as possible. And for anyone that joined us last week, what we did is we just stayed online a little bit longer after that session for 15 minutes or so, just to answer any other questions you might have about job search in general. So we're going to do that again today. So anything that's not to do with this particular topic, please do stay around and ask that afterwards. Okay, so now that's all over, we're going to start straight away with what are people's concerns. So when we talk through, we came up with a few ideas here. So we're going to kind of go into those different categories. So the first one is the assumption that you are too old. So I think this was you, Alyson, that was going to start with this one.
Yeah, and I've experienced this a lot with clients coming to me and saying, well, am I too old to get another job? And I always say to them, it isn't about age, it's about experience. You know, age is just a number. And I consider it to be like your flying hours, really, your experience. And therefore, you know, it is about what you bring to an organisation, which is your experience and your potentially your work ethic and all of those things that yes, they could pay somebody a lot less money than you, but in general, that you have got an awful lot to offer.
Brilliant. Okay, Gill, anything to add to that point?
Yeah, well, I think that is absolutely, that's the sort of thing people get worried about. But then they get quite particular. They say, well, I will have the wrong experience, or will they actually want my experience? Particularly, will I cost them too much? And I think that is a concern, because people get used to a certain type of salary. That's what they're looking for. Or will they just have an innate prejudice that I'm over the hill? And these are the sort of things that people worry about. And it can really be quite distracting from the job search, actually, because fear grips them.
Yeah, okay. So next point then is about the feeling that you're overqualified for that role. So Gill?
Yeah, well, I think it's sometimes, and I have had clients being told that they're overqualified for a role, but interestingly, not the ones who are worried about the age, that somebody earlier on in their career. It's really about how you position your experience. So it might be, yes, you are well qualified for the role, but if you're also somebody who enjoys their work and likes to really get stuck in and do it, it's how you present it, how you show that on your CV, how you show that in your covering mail or your covering letter, and how you actually do that when you're actually in the interview. Of course, there will be some people out there who like to use the word overqualified just because, we have good and bad experiences, don't we? But I think it's about how you position yourself.
Yeah, I think as well that sometimes people might say, oh, you're overqualified, and kind of almost think that's a compliment to the person, which actually it's not necessarily the case, is it?
Well, certainly not when you're job hunting.
No, exactly. So Alyson, anything to add to that one?
No, and I suppose it is, if that is the genuine feedback that you are overqualified. I mean, it might be just something that people say, like you say, to just sideline your CV. But if you genuinely are, then maybe you aren't targeting the right role. Maybe you do need to be targeting something else. But also you could explain that. A lot of people who are in the over 50 category want to do something with less experience, or take their foot off the gas a bit and do a lower level job. And then you would need to just purely explain that in your cover letter, saying, this is my situation after 30 years in industry. I now would like to focus on doing something different.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've definitely had a few clients that have kind of fallen into that category, that they don't necessarily want to work in the corporate environment anymore and are wanting to reduce their hours. And particularly, I think after the kind of the COVID year, I think lots of people are addressing that kind of work-life balance a bit more, aren't they? Okay, so the next assumption, so we're basically talking through the assumptions and then we're going to kind of talk about what you can do to counteract some of those. So the next one here was age versus cost versus experience. So Alyson, I think that's back to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I probably mentioned that in before, so I've jumped out of sequence here a bit. But I think I call it flying hours when I'm talking to my clients. It isn't about age, and depending on your background, you know, my background was HR. They were not going to give a job, you know, of a considerable size project to somebody who hadn't got the experience to do that, and you have to build that experience up. Yes, you can pay a graduate a lot less money than you can pay somebody in their 50s, but they won't have the level of experience and have experienced some of the things that are important. You know, in terms of that the work that they are doing, you know, it just simply won't happen. So yes, you can pay them less, but you're not going to get the right level of experience, is my view.
Yeah, absolutely. Gill, anything to add to that?
No, I just think, well, one of the things you can bring that with age cost experience is one of the things you can suggest in that is that you're able to mentor people who are earlier on in their careers. So that age and cost is actually of a real benefit if you're happy to actually bring other people on and share that.
Yeah,
because
that's
that has a much bigger advantage then than just your role.
Yeah,
Yeah.
brilliant. Okay.
I think about the experience as well. Is, you know, are you able to hit the ground running? Which I think in a lot of situations you are. If you've done that sort of role before, you can then come in and do it again. Whereas someone else, you know, who hasn't got the requisite experience might need to get up to speed.
Yes. Great. Okay. So energy and enthusiasm. So this was kind of a lack of energy and enthusiasm, I think. So Gill, do you want to elaborate on that one?
Yeah, I think this is something people are worried about. People make the assumptions, or maybe some people do, that people have lack of energy and enthusiasm. In my experience of working with clients and generally just your life in general, those people who have energy and enthusiasm for life have it whether they're 20 or 90. It's not at all connected to age. It's to do with the way you greet the world. And the way you greet the world, you'll find the world tends to greet you like it as well. But having said that, I did have a client who was the only candidate left for the job, for a very senior job in HR. And they wanted to come back and ask him to see if he had the energy for the job, which we both sort of looked at each other, raised our eyes and thought, well, let's go for it. Well, that was about 5 years ago and he's still there now. So I dare say not only has he got the energy and the enthusiasm and the experience, the 3 E's, he's clearly doing a good job.
Excellent. So we can kind of come on to that a bit more when we talk about interviews later, can't we? But how you demonstrate that energy and enthusiasm. So Alyson, anything to add to that point?
Yeah, I think, I mean, I agree with everything Gill said. I have experienced it with clients where, you know, I'm certainly seeing, and particularly over the last year, that the energy and enthusiasm is not just an age thing, but it does fit into a lot of categories. It is more around that fit. And I can see it with a client where they had the technical skills and ability, but actually got to the interview and the energy wasn't quite there. The reason behind that was they weren't sure whether they wanted the job or not, whether they actually wanted to retire, and they were in that mid camp between do I want another big job or do I want to do something else? And actually the feedback they got was that they were not energetic or enthusiastic enough. Which, you know, fair enough, if they're not at that stage, then that could be an indication of the next 6 months. So, you know, what I would say is if you really want something and you really want that job, then make sure that you are focusing your energy on the things that you want.
Yeah. And going back to a point from our very first session, we had Lee Jones, a recruiter, on, and he said, remember to tell people that you want the job, because he said you'd be surprised at how many people don't do that. And he was in a situation where he had 2 candidates, and the one that actually said, yes, I really want this job, was the one that got offered, because they couldn't differentiate in any other way. So it's a really important thing just to do that. So I see we've got a comment come through from Jeffrey. So what he's saying here is, on cost, age, experience, you can also be creative in the hours you are contracted to work, so 4 days per week and not 5, and combine that with developing internal candidates to transfer knowledge and sustainability. So yes, great point.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jeffrey. Yes, and I'm again definitely seeing lots of other people that are kind of reducing their hours. So we've got a question in here saying, what advice would you give on getting the energy and enthusiasm across ahead of being in an interview situation? So that's from Paul. So Gill, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, it's actually a conversation I often have with my clients. And I think one of the things is the use of language. And interesting, I've actually had a coaching client, or several coaching clients, where I've actually had to work on the language they choose to use. Work on it a lot, certainly in getting the CV done. So we're using things like verbs, because it does bring a lot of energy to a CV if they've used verbs. And again, when writing, constructing a cover letter or email, we will play around with the words. So we're getting active words. So rather than using the passive tense, say could, would, should, we're using the active tense, like I want, I like, rather than I would like. So it's getting that, because it's just little things. People don't realise you've done it, but they just read it and think, oh, I'm getting a feeling of a lift when I read this CV or look at this mail. It's something that does give me that energy as well.
Yeah, language is really important. Alyson, anything to add to that?
No, I totally agree with that in terms of the language that you use, the strong action verbs, particularly starting on the CV with, achievement or accomplishment statements that are very much around what they have done, which show the level, also the scope and the scale of the responsibility that they've had, with the words you use. So, did you lead a team or did you manage a team? Did you develop the strategy or did you implement the strategy? Again, it can indicate levels of seniority as well, which it can be helpful. But I think, again, there's nothing wrong, like you say, with saying that you are passionate about, or the reason you want this job is because you are really interested in this particular industry sector, or or making a difference for this particular role.
I think it's that cover letter, isn't it, or cover mail? It's, if you like, it's why you're interested in that job, how you can help solve their problems, what you can bring. So it is actually really sharing that, and it's stating it very clearly. And I often think, when I've been on the recruiting edge, in fact, sometimes we've actually insisted that people write a cover letter, because it really helps with the screening out. And you do get the ones who've got a bit more, I guess, oomph in their letters, in their written word.
Yeah, definitely. And this is totally unrelated to job seeking, but I've recently done a learn to play the piano challenge in 5 days last week. And the guy, Mark Deek, so I met him on LinkedIn. The language he uses is just really amazing and inspiring, really. He basically said on the first session, I don't want you to practice. And kind of thought, what do you mean? He said, I want you to play. So he said, play and practice is a chore, but play is fun. So, and I think that really struck a chord with me. I've been trying to work out how I can get that into to talk to people about interview practice. But yeah, I think it's a really, really good point, that, the difference between something boring and something fun, and that applies in anything, really, doesn't it? Okay, so Jeffrey's come back again to say, I think energy and enthusiasm is in the prep work, contacting the organisation, others in the network that can give you an insight into the role, and why you want it confirms you don't. Why you want it or not confirms you don't. So yeah, that's a good point. Definitely finding out people that already do that, talking to them. So thank you again, Jeffrey. Okay, so the next topic was technology. So I think this one was related to a fear of technology, wasn't it? So Gill, I think this one was you, is that?
Yeah, and I think this can be very real. And I think, feeling that they've not used the latest technology. However, this one is completely get-roundable, because if you think how much better we've all become in the last 15 months at using all different sorts of technology, which involves filming and cameras, which we probably couldn't do right at the start. So the more you use it, the better you get. And it's also finding out what technology do they use, perhaps in other organisations, or particular to the work that you do, whatever your role is, and making sure, finding free courses online or some other courses online, that you find out more about it, and you can have a go, because it's use and that familiarity that builds that comfort with it,
Yeah.
so that you can use it better. So again, it's about how much preparation are you prepared to do, and so you can demonstrate that you are familiar and comfortable not only with the technology but also learning about new technology, because there will always be more to learn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Alyson, anything to add on that one, the technology front?
I mean, I think don't be afraid of specific technology, because again, I've seen that with clients where they've said, well, I haven't used, such and such a package, but, I haven't used SAP, but I've used Oracle. They any kind of packages that are different or systems that are different, then you can be trained in that. But I also agree with Gill. I think, is learn it. If you're, frightened of the online world, then there are still, education colleges that, again, offer lots of free courses that are out there that you could just go and dabble in, and just updating yourself in, the basics of Microsoft Office, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the next one was, I've been in the same job for a long time. How will I fit in elsewhere? So Alyson, on that one.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about fit when we're talking about deciding about the right next step in your career, and fit isn't just about what you can do, your experience. It's made up of a whole range of things. So, is it your skills, and which are most of which are transferable? Is it your values? Is it your interests, as we've already said, and your motivation? So, fit is a whole series of things, and if you get right in all of those areas, then you're more likely to find something that you do fit into, because it's the things that drive you, that you're interested in, things that allow you to play to your skills and that maybe align to your values.
Yeah, great. Okay, Gill, anything to add on that one?
Yeah, I think absolutely what Alyson said, but I also think, in a way, if somebody's been somewhere a long time, it's a perfectly normal reaction, a normal concern to have. And it sometimes comes out of that whole change process of being disrupted in the career, which wasn't perhaps sometimes by choice, sometimes not by choice. But I think also, just as that, it is thinking about where you want to be, what sort of environment you want to be in. And in that process of moving from where you are now to the next role, sometimes there are opportunities along the way to practice being somewhere different, if you like. And I've certainly had that with clients.
Yeah. Brilliant. Okay, so now moving on to what can you do. So there was a lot of assumptions we talked about there, things that we know from our experience of our clients, what they've talked about. We've just had another comment in, so I'll just put that up. So Jenny is saying some people use fit as a way of discriminating against others not like them. So any comments on that? So Gill, I can see you nodding there.
Yeah, I think that can be used sometimes by an organisation. They use, there's no fit. I think less so now by the larger organisations, because they're so much more aware about the language they use and the selection processes. But certainly a few years ago, yes, that would be a way of using it.
Yeah. So I guess if you were given feedback like that, a pushback would be to maybe go back and ask for a bit more specific feedback.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I also think if there is, specific feedback, and the reason is that, you are a particular type of organisation, part of me would say, would you want to work there anyway? Certainly it wouldn't appeal to me if I thought they were discriminating on the basis of that I'm not like them, then clearly I am not going to fit in. So why would I want to work there?
Yeah, that's a good point. Thank you. Okay, so we had all the assumptions. Now we're looking at what you can do. So the first one here is looking at optimizing your CV, so clean and current. So Gill, do you want to expand on that one?
Yeah, your CV is your marketing document. It says, this is me, this is who I am, this is all my experience. And what happens over time as we keep updating it and updating it rather than starting from scratch, it gets to be a bit like a baggy sweatshirt, a bit misshapen. So one of the things I think, if you're really concerned, is to start again from scratch and to actually start with a base document, and actually everything's up for grabs. So research really good formats online. Could even look at some of our back catalogues, actually, of these sessions, because there's lots of tips about CV. But I often get people to really start, because to make it an achievement-based CV, actually start, before we do the CV, with a list of their achievements, no matter how big or how small, because often what differentiates a mediocre candidate from a really good candidate is the small things they do around the edges. So by actually starting off with your list of achievements, you can then build your CV using the information that you've got from, and there's plenty out there, and we've certainly got some, and making sure that you're using a good clean typeface. So it's one that's sans serif, so it looks clean and fresh, because that is hugely important, the layout of it. That first page, it's what I call glance appeal. And your CV must have glance appeal. If it doesn't have glance appeal, people will just, if they've got lots, they will put it in the out pile. So it looks easy to read. If it looks easy to read and well laid out and really clean and crisp and very current, people will read it. And then you've got them reading it, so then they'll look at the experience. So you're getting closer the whole time. Because you've got a clean and current CV. And remember, you don't have to put your age on your CV. You don't have to put lots and lots of dates. And they're really interested in probably the last 10 years, maybe 15. And the rest of it could be name, rank and number, as I call it.
Yeah.
Anything that came before.
Yeah, I definitely agree on the font that you use. I think the number of people I still see that have got Times New Roman, for instance, which I just think looks so dated. It's kind of a 90s font, really. So I use Avenir. That's the font that I really like. But if you just spend a bit of time looking through for the fonts, and as you say, Gill, sans serif fonts, so that translate nicely online and offline. So, Alyson, anything to add to that on the CV front?
No, I think, and we've covered a lot on CV in the past catalogues as well.
Yes.
Font size, I mean, you mentioned yours. My favourite will be an Arial or a Calibri, and just making sure it's consistent in size. So I would go for an 11 in the Calibri 11, and the headings in 12.
Yeah.
But as long as the CV is consistent throughout, it's looking nicer.
Yeah, it's funny you say that about an 11. I often say to people, you want to make it easy for them to read. So if they're having to reach for their reading glasses all the time, so just try and help them out. Nothing smaller than an 11.
Yeah, great. So Jenny's come in to say true. So I think she was probably reflecting back with what you said, Alyson, about aligning the values with the organisation. And then we've got a question here from Petra saying, is a cover page recommendable for the CV? So we've definitely talked about cover letters in the past, and I think same principles as the CV, really. So decent sized font. I use the same headers on the CV as the cover letter myself, because I think it looks nice to tie them up, and really tailoring it for the job that you're going for. So so unless you've got anything else to add to that, we can definitely talk about.
You're really trying to draw their attention to things on your CV. So I always say you want to take their eye from your cover letter so they go straight to your CV and look at it and look for those things. And also I think it's absolutely okay to use about 3 or 4 bullets in your cover letter, because these things are read at speed, and it really helps the reader out. Yeah. She says with feeling, having looked at lots.
Looked at lots, excellent. Okay, so our next one then, making sure you're on LinkedIn with more than a minimal profile. So Alyson, do you want to mention that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think LinkedIn, we all know how important it is to have a profile, and what do we mean by more than a minimal? I would always say, your LinkedIn profile should be 50 to 60% of your CV. Certainly the experience needs to be the same, because people will go and look at that. The nice thing about LinkedIn, though, is the about section on LinkedIn, is that you can be less formal, and you can talk about yourself as an I or a me. And I think I have this skill, or I think what I would bring to this organisation is this. So it's more like a coffee chat experience that you can have, which I think makes it easier. So always use the about section. And the other one I would say is always use the skills section. Make sure that whatever you're applying for, that you match up with the job description, and go and add the skills in if you haven't already got them.
Definitely. And again, we have done a couple of sessions on LinkedIn. Actually, I think there's been 3 sessions on LinkedIn. So again, if you want more information on those, then I can put the links in the chat to those later so people can go back on that. So first impressions count and appropriateness. So Gill?
Yeah, I think it's just like with any other role. So when you get past, I think going back to the LinkedIn, that good picture, because too many people I've worked with who haven't got one because they've been in their company for a long time, they've just got the little egghead in. And I think that the stats aren't you 7 times more likely to get looked at if you've got an actual photo?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
And going back to that, this is all part of the first impressions count. People will look at your LinkedIn profile. They will look to see that you've got an amount, that it is a full profile.
Yeah.
The other thing people may well do before they even meet you is they may well look, some do, at other profiles. So what's your Facebook picture like? How are you on Twitter? Are you on Instagram? What's your picture like? And okay, they are less formal, but just make sure they're suitable.
Yeah.
If that's seen for other people to see as well.
Yeah.
Because this is all part of this pre-work that people are likely to do and look at the first impressions. And just as isn't it in just 3 seconds? And we say 30 seconds, but I think it's less than that. So make sure that you're looking appropriate for the job that you're applying for. And that's even this day with video interviews, we still need to look appropriate for the jobs we're applying for. So obviously in graphic design, they do expect you to be a bit more colourful than they would do in banking. And in banking, make sure that you're matching that profile, or whether it's teaching or whatever it is. And also that you look of this 5 years. People don't have to look hyper trendy, but we do have to look of this sort of decade as well, because that's how we can, people will form an impression of how up to date we are through things like our social media accounts and LinkedIn profiles, and through our CV, through our cover letter, and through that first visual representation. Yeah,
great. Anything to add to that, Alyson?
No, I think Jill's done a great job there covering most of that. But I think, my view would be is people do expect you to go smart for an interview, whether it is face-to-face or on Zoom. I get asked that question a lot. And I think it gives you confidence. I think if you dress, up, I always say dress up a level. I agree, dress appropriate for your age, for the weather, for the job, but dress up a level because people expect you to be smart, even if the environment is dressed down. So if you're going to an organisation that's jeans and sweatshirts, I would not go to an interview in my jeans and a sweatshirt, even if I knew that. I might not go booted, but I would not go I would dress up a level.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, especially when we're doing it virtually, people will be sitting there and one of the things that really does help if you want to be taken seriously is to wear shoes, because it's top to toe and it is important. Amazing how differently you will feel, how much more in control you actually feel if you've got your shoes on.
Yeah, this is a Zoom interview. Rather than rocking up to the office there for
face-to-face. Because I think Zoom interviews are going to continue, even when we're doing face-to-face. Probably get the screening interviews will be done via Zoom, and I suspect then, as things resume, then you'll maybe, if you're close enough, may well be invited to a face-to-face interview.
Yeah, great. Okay. Right, we're running short on time, so we'll quickly start whizzing through a little bit more. So we talked quite a lot in our prep about networking, and so we've sort of worded it slightly differently. So you're saying use your extensive list of contacts and connections, because if you are that bit older, then chances are you are going to have a big network. So Alyson, do you want to expand a bit more on that one?
I think you've covered that, Sarah. I think it is about going back through your contacts, connections, whether they're through LinkedIn or past roles, etc. It's always interesting to see where people have gone and where they've ended up, and using that connectivity, particularly through LinkedIn, to find people who work in organisations you're interested in.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said before, don't just limit it to people you work with, limit it to people you know socially as well, because who knows who they might know.
Absolutely. And the older you are, the more connections you'll have. So I think that's one of the benefits, really. And going back through out of work contacts, a contract I worked on a few years ago came from a fellow school governor, just to show it can be social.
Definitely. Comment in from Paul, they're saying interesting point about social media profiles. I've started using the same profile picture across all platforms to help with personal branding. So yeah, that's a good point as well. Thank you for that, Paul. Okay, so next we talked about taking on a voluntary role, so that's a way for you to identify your transferable skills. So Gill, anything to add on that one?
Well, I think as well, this could be really helpful because this gives you a chance to work in a different environment. When we talked about people have been in an organisation for a long time, this is a way of testing the water and also feeling more confident, because you see then how you're transferable. Many of your skills are. They don't just fit to one organisation, they will fit into others. And sometimes when people have been in a company for a long time, it can take them a little bit longer to get another role. So this is a useful way of providing structure to the week and keeping on going, keeping your brain engaged, building some more skills, because these are still valid as well.
Yeah, brilliant. And interim role, Alyson? Sorry, I forgot to put the picture up. Consider an interim role, yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and again, as Jill said, it's a way of getting back into work and a way of targeting things you're particularly interested in. So maybe a shorter term contract would suit some people to try a few things out, test the market.
Yeah, it's a great idea, isn't it, in terms of testing something new and kind of proving to yourself that you can do it as well.
It certainly worked really well for a client of mine. I've been 19 years in one space, and she took on an interim role, and it was really, really helpful. It showed her as well how effective she was, and so it was really good for her confidence.
Yeah. Brilliant. So the next two I'm just going to kind of put up and talk through very quickly. So contact only recommended agencies. So don't just send your CV to everyone. Talk to people that you know, that kind of the agencies who have worked for them. Similar with be targeted in who you approach. And then thinking about be prepared to research the current ways to secure a role. So we talked a bit about identifying those organisations that are sort of positively recruiting for people in certain age categories. So Alyson, I think you had a couple of examples there.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, there are quite a few companies out there that pledge to have a percentage of recruitment over 50s, and you know, there's a couple of well-known brands like Barclays, Aviva, and the Co-op. And the Co-op has 20%, 26% of its workforce are between the age of 50 and 64. So you know, there are companies out there who positively encourage the elder person to apply.
Excellent. Jeffrey's just added another comment here to say voluntary roles are really fab to boost your confidence and to affirm you have plenty to offer. Just watch out you balance this with monetising your skills and experience. That is the challenge in portfolio career, definitely. I know we've talked about that quite heavily in the past when we've talked about trusteeships and how you can get kind of included in just getting too much work on there. So and Jeffrey's also saying another useful session with new tips and reminders. What about sessions for the over 60s? I'm in that club with another birthday on Friday, loving it. So thanks for suggesting that, Jeffrey, and you are most welcome to come and join us to talk about that, because I know we're looking for a topic for you to come and talk to. So and he said thank you to us. He's got to leave now, so thank you for joining again, Jeffrey. So we did also have a point here about interview prep. So, but I know we are also running very short of time now. So anything extra you want to add on interview prep? We've sort of talked it through, haven't we, as we've been going? But Gill, anything to add there?
I think one of the key things here is if you have got any questions you're concerned about, because I think if you can prepare for all the normal competency-based interviews, if you are concerned about some questions, make sure you prep the hard questions, the ones you don't want. And actually try them out with some friends or members of the family, so you've got a good answer ready. I think that's the best thing. Make sure the other ones that you can answer easily, fine. It's the ones that are hard. Yeah,
absolutely. Alyson, anything to add to that?
The only thing is if you are doing a remote interview, practice with the technology as well. So see what you can see, so you can see what's around you and what people can see of you, how you're coming across, pace, tone, volume, etc. So beforehand.
Yeah, brilliant. So thank you very much. There's been lots of really good info there as usual, and we'll end this part of the session with our normal top tip to take away. So Gill, what's your top tip for those in this over 50s bracket?
I think definitely preparation for the whole thing. This is all doable. It's all doable and you will get a role, but it's also using your contracts and make your achievements count.
Okay, brilliant. Alyson?
I would say, don't go in with the mindset of being fixed in that, that my age is going to stand against me. Age is just a number. If you go in with the mindset that you're going to fail, then that will probably lead to a failure. Be proud of what you've done, be proud of where you've worked, and go in with a positive mindset.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. So thank you very much. And as I said at the beginning, we're just going to stay around for a little bit longer in case anyone else has any other general questions about job search. So if you do, then please do ask those. I can see there's still a few people online, so please feel free to ask anything. In the meantime, I think last week I started off by just asking Michael and Joe what they'd noticed about kind of job seeking at the moment. So have you got any kind of observations, Gill, with your clients, how long they're taking to find roles, if anything's changed, that kind of thing?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily, it might be taking them, it depends which sector they're in, might be taking them a little bit longer. But on the whole, no, it's just a bit different because of the way we're doing things. But having said that, people have got quite used to working remotely now. So they are on top of that. But it probably means that they can't go into a company, because when you went for your interview, you normally got a feel of an organisation.
Yes.
And that's much harder when we're all sitting in a room at home using our Zoom or Microsoft Teams.
Yeah, definitely. Alyson, anything you've noticed? Have you anything picking up or anything like that?
I think Jill's point is right about a hybrid type of working arrangements going forward. I think that is definitely something we're seeing. But there's still a lot of jobs out there, and all of my clients are getting jobs. So don't be afraid that the scaremongering about the economic climate at the moment. I know it's difficult to get a job because you're up against other people, but my clients are all still getting jobs.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think definitely things do seem to be picking up. I mentioned last week, so I've had a couple of clients that have found jobs in sort of 5 to 6 weeks, which is very quick even in normal times. But they've been highly targeted in what they've been applying for, and it's worked really well for them. So just got a couple of comments. So Petra saying thank you and goodbye. So thank you for your question. Jenny saying brilliant, thanks. So thank you for joining. So it looks like there's not any other questions. So I think we will probably leave it there if that's the case. And next week I'm going to be joined by Michaela and Catherine. We're going to be talking about how to prepare for the first 90 days in your new role. So this is again a topic that we cover quite frequently with clients and help them with coaching in that. So really, once you've secured that new role, how are you going to manage yourself for those first 3 months? So looking forward to that session. So thank you again for joining, everybody. Thank you, Gill. Thank you, Alyson. And we'll see you next week. Thank you.
Thanks.